for venstrefløjen, og næsten lige så mange anholdelser.
Jeg har talt med manden bag undersøgelsen af ekstremisten fra Europol, og han fortæller, at selvom der ikke er mange terrorsager, der involverer højrefløjen, så er der faktisk meget aktivitet på den yderste højrefløj.
Right-wing terrorism is a growing concern. You don't see that in the figure, but what we observe and what the member states reports to us in terms of threat from right-wing is an increased threat. You see it through the propaganda, through a lot more internet activity of right-wing extremism that come to terrorism afterwards.
But then why don't we see it in the numbers? I mean, there's very, very few arrests when it comes to right-wing terrorism, and it also shows that there's very few attacks.
The difficulty with terrorism is general, is you can never measure terrorism with figures. It would be lovely that we could have indication with figures on terrorism. It is much more complex than this. It's the activity of people, of lone wolves, I would say secret groups, that are working, that are preparing things, or that are currently radicalizing themselves to a certain level that could come to the end of a terrorist attack and actions.
Okay. What if you should compare the right-wing terror, the threat of right-wing terror, to the threat of left-wing terror and Islamic terror?
It is not to be compared. Threats to threats cannot be compared. Terrorism and organized crime cannot be compared. What we do see now with the activities of religiously inspired terrorism and all this activity is we have a growing threat on the right wing, slightly, and we have the terrorism that from jihadist activities is quite stable these years, though lone actors is becoming the real threat. As we have seen this year, many groups can also trigger some guys to radicalize within their countries.
You say that it's very difficult. It's very difficult to measure terrorism by these numbers, but what do you think then we can conclude from these numbers?
We conclude from this number that we have a relative stability of terrorist threat in Europe, though we have some actors, lone actors and groups that are still under the radar, though some are detected, that can pose a serious threat to the EU.